Welcome back to Normal LOL. I'm your host, El Rico Ramon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. No matter where you are, this is where you need to be. And today's subject matter is very, very important. We're going to talk about the bitters. I know you're like, what in the hell are the bitters? The bitters are one of 5 therapeutic elements, the 5 flavors that are needed to basically manifest good behavior within your organs, the range of your organs, all systems that keep the vessel working in its most beautiful nature regarding rhythm. We talk about different healing modalities all the time, whether it's exercise, whether it's meditation, um, hobbies, etc., etc. But diet is essential, very, very, very important, because there's things in the immediacy of our reality that causes effects on the organs, on the body. So we need to know like what things we are ingesting, and bitters is one of 5 really, really important elements and therapeutic flavors that really go a long ways in helping to contain and keep the vessel's rhythm and shape. So this episode is going to be a lot different than usual. You're going to hear a lot of different gaps and spaces within the episode because I'm in teaching mode. I am known to be a detective, to do research on a lot of things concerning these healing modalities. I'm using a lot of different sources today, so just bear with me as I go through every little thing that I have, because I have a lot of sources. It could have been, first of all, let me say this too also. The breakdown is going to be as simplistic as possible. I think about my mentors. One of my mentors and genius historians and scholars, once said that if you can't if you can't teach it to where a 5th grader understands it, then you're not a good teacher. So I'm going to teach you as if you're a 5th grader, and I think that this is going to work out for all of us on that level. And if you're new to this platform, I want to make it clear, just in case you haven't heard other episodes or haven't started at the beginning, because there are a lot of episodes at this point. This is episode 93. Again, the bitters. This platform is about various healing modalities as it pertains to traditional and non-traditional therapies and remedies based upon my journey in particular, as it pertains to altered states, as it pertains to what they label as mood disorders, or what Western psychiatry labels as mental illness. My journey was unique. Nevertheless, it was similar to many, many others that are out there. And I want to give much, much reverence to those who came before me, my ancestors, beautiful shamans and curanderismos that have been doing this for thousands and thousands, maybe even millions of years. We have utilized different healing remedies prior to what we do in the West. No shade, no cap. So if you're here and you're new to this, understand that everything that is discussed on this platform is all about healing the mind, healing the spirit, healing the body, because I say all the time, there should have never been a one-size-fits-all. There's a lot of things we have to do on a daily basis, consistently, in order to heal, okay? So this is one of many things. Again, we're talking about diet. I could have easily just scooped up all of Dr. Sebi stuff. If you don't know who Dr. Sebi is, Google him after this is over with. There's so much information out there on Dr. Sebi. And the reason why I'm not including Dr. Sebi in this is because this information is actually going to make you respect Dr. Sebi even more, because one of many things that Dr. Sebi championed is alkaline-based dieting as it pertains to mucus buildup, or dampness, or candida, which could be fungi in the vessel. All this stuff I'm about to talk about is exactly what he was talking about. But I wanted to use other sources, that's so that, and you should always do that. You should always have more than one source. I remember learning about Dr. Sebi a while back, and I wanted to not only understand him, I wanted to understand, different pieces and different places of where this information was and how long it's been around. So no shade to Dr. Sebi. The fact that I'm not bringing him up on this episode It has nothing to do with my lack of respect for him. I revere Dr. Sebi tremendously, and again, one of the reasons why is because of the I'll say little bit, I won't say enormous, but the little bit of information and research I've done over the past year. So we have information coming out of Mark's Daily Apple, also information coming out of NCBI, National Library of Medicine. We have information coming out of JGP, which is the Journal of Physiology. Hold on, let me check that out 1 second. I want to make sure I get that right. Yes. The Journal of General Physiology. We also have information coming out of Healing with Whole Foods, Asian Traditions and Modern Nutrition. And that's pretty much is going to sum it up. So going into elementary mode, let's start here. Your vessel is like a bathroom, okay? Your vessel is like a bathroom. In your bathroom, you have one of two things or both. You have either a ceiling vent or you have a window or two. If you do not have a vent or a window in your bathroom, this is what's going to happen. Your bathroom is going to become very, very nasty very quickly because of the humidity. The humidity and the backup of moisture and whatever else is going to cause fungus buildup, bacteria buildup. All that dampness is causing this containment of things that don't need to be there. And the best way to relieve these things from happening or from this toxic buildup over a short period of time is to have ventilation. And what is ventilation? Ventilation is wind. Ventilation is air. Ventilation is oxygen. Ventilation is cool. Keep these things in your mind while I'm going through this so you understand what bitters are doing for the vessel. Also, shout out to Global Bitters, by the way, too. This is for you guys also. So the vessel is the same way. You have to ventilate the vessel as often as possible as far as balance and harmony is concerned. But obviously we don't have windows. We don't have a ceiling ventilation fan of windows. We do have windows. The windows are the orifices, everything that covers the body. But there's many, many different routes of success as it pertains to oxygen-induced airflow and ventilation in the body, whether it's through exercise, whether it's through breathing exercises, meditation, whether it's through diet. There's a lot of different ways to get oxygen through the body and ventilation in the body. One of a number of ways to get ventilation in the body is bitters, is the elements of the body, of the flavors of the body, rather. So when we start talking about 5 therapeutic flavors, for example, you have bitter, you have sour, you have sweet, you have pungent, and you have salty. Some words you're going to need to understand off the bat is bile, for example, or gastric juice. Bile is basically a bitter, greenish, brown, alkaline fluid that aids in digestion, and it is secreted by the liver and stored in the gallbladder, okay? Stored in the gallbladder. Very interesting, if you don't know this, there is another definition for bile. This fluid, again, a bitter, greenish, brown, alkaline fluid, it aids in digestion, okay? Stored in the liver, in the gallbladder. Secreted by the liver, stored in the gallbladder. The second definition for bile is anger and irritability. If the bile is off in your system, what do you think that's causing the vessel to do? What signals do you think are being sent to the brain? Irritation, anger. Hold on a second.
Ghost, you got one? You in the air?
Yes.
You gotta put.
It's on.
I'm sorry, I was vacuuming.
It's okay.
I'm gonna do you tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
So sorry, just in case that you heard that interruption, it was one of the cleaning ladies coming in to clean my studio. So I digress. Moving on. Bile, if not contained and taken care of regarding the way that this alkaline fluid is secreted through the liver, it's going to cause some very serious issues as it pertains to the signals that are being tossed back and forth to the brain. Really quick too, I want to touch on signals, because a lot of people really don't understand what it is that's going on regarding the signals in the gut, in the liver, pancreas, the gallbladder, the organs. How is it being crossed, and how are these signals going back and forth to the brain? I want to read something right quick. Terrible diet, sugar, stressful events, traumas, tragedies, work-related stress, social anxiety causes a release of cortisol and stress hormones that affect the inflammation in the gut. Inflammation is stuff rising, stuff expanding, all right? Gut-brain access through the vagus nerve. Let's talk about vagus right quick. Again, keeping this very elementary. Let's go to vagus right quick. Vagus nerve. It's a cranial nerve, okay? Vagus nerve is a cranial nerve. It's one of the cranial nerves that connect the brain to the body. The vagus nerve functions contribute to the autonomic nervous system. We're just gonna keep it like that, okay? One of the cranial nerves that connect the brain to the body. That's all you need to know. One of the cranial nerves that connect the brain to the body. Gut-brain access through the vagus nerve oversees a vast array of crucial bodily functions, including control of mood, immune response, digestion, and heart rate. You can go from the brain to the gut and then back. It establishes one of the connections between the brain and the gastrointestinal tract and sends information about the state of the inner organs to the brain via afferent fibers. I don't know what that is. Don't worry about that. It's not necessary to know. Excuse me. I have some mucus buildup. So we'll throw that to the side because, again, it's important that you understand what the vagus nerve is. It's important that you understand what this bile is. It's important that you understand what these bitters are doing. Let's go to the bitters now. Now that we know that in the gut that there are signals being passed back and forth through the vagus nerve to the cranial system, we now know why things going on in your organs, your liver, your heart is affecting your mind. Now we know. Now we know that, if your bile is thrown off, we have an understanding, an understanding, an overstanding that is one of the reasons why you may become angry or irritable, among many other issues and symptoms that will occur regarding the mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the bitters now, keeping it as simplistic as possible. Again, this is all about how to ventilate the body as it pertains to oxygen and an alkaline-induced type of diet. Bitter taste receptors. Bitter taste receptors, the initials for that scientifically are TAS2Rs or T2Rs. Belong to the superfamily of 7 transmembrane G protein coupled receptors. I'm not going to get too deep off into that. This is very interesting. I wanted to read this right quick. Good medicine always tastes bitter. That's very important to know, because as we go through this, you're going to understand that we've been groomed to believe that everything we eat, every time we sit down to eat, it has to be about entertainment. It has to be about joy. It has to be about comfort. What you need to know is that is not what it has always been about. Oftentimes, when you are eating, it has nothing to do with how you feel. It has nothing to do with your happiness and your joy. It has to do with the happiness and joy of your vessel. You see, we eat for ego oftentimes. But as it pertains to the vessel's health, as it pertains to the maintenance of the rhythm of the vessel, the happiness, the joy that it needs to receive inside, you have to do some things that are not that comfortable. And saying the word bitter in itself should obviously resonate something in your mind regarding bitter. When I say bitter, most people's faces probably crunch up like, ugh, bitters, nasty. Yes, the bitters are not the great, that great tasting. Nevertheless, as they're powerful. They're so powerful, and it's so needed to help good flow throughout the vessel. Good medicine always tastes bitter. This ancient Oriental wisdom may soon be verified with modern biology. Traditionally, bitter taste, one of 5 basic taste qualities. We already covered the other 5, remember that. It's thought to guide organisms to avoid harmful toxins and noxious substances, and thus is critical to animal and human survival. The sensors for bitter compounds in vertebrates are bitter taste receptors. We talked about those initials already. Again, those initials are T2Rs and TAS2Rs, a class of G protein coupled receptors. Let's go ahead and stop right there because, again, we're getting too heavy into it. We don't want to dig that deep. We don't want to know all that. We just want to know what these bitters are doing. You now know that you have bitter taste receptors. Where are these taste receptors? From what I've gathered, there's about 25 bitter taste receptors total. I think there's 7 that they pay a lot of attention to, but I've read that there's about 25 total taste receptors. This is coming out of Mark's Daily Apple. Bitter taste receptors in our mouths release neurotransmitters that stimulate via the vagus nerve. Remember what the vagus nerve is, all right? Vagus nerve is a cranial nerve. It helps with the signals that are being passed back and forth throughout the entire vessel. Via the vagus nerve, an increase in intracellular calcium concentrations. It's thought that this action then encourages secretion of the intestinal hormone. I'm going to try this word. Cholecystokinin. Cholecystokinin, thereby initiating the release of digestive enzymes and bile. Now, you know what's interesting? Cytokines. Let me read this to you, okay? Multiple studies show how inflammation, remember, inflammation, expansion, to rise, heat, affects depression. Inflammation affecting dopamine in the brain. Inflammatory cytokines, again, they are proteins also, just like the bitter taste receptors are G proteins. They play a major role in cell signaling across the blood-brain barrier. They disrupt serotonin release. They disrupt dopamine release. They disrupt neurotransmitters that are being released. The inflammatory cytokines and chemicals from our immune cells are getting into the brain and disrupting neurotransmitter release. Inflammatory cytokines. So going back to intestinal hormone, cholecystokinin, it's the same thing. These are proteins and these are signals, very minuscule on the biocellular molecular structure, very minuscule proteins that are signals. They are passed back and forth between the organs and the vagus nerve, that being in the cranial structure of the brain. Also thereby initiating the release of digestive enzymes and bile. Again, same thing we just covered. So, bitter compounds in the mouth trigger the release of digestive compounds via the autonomic hormone release. I don't think there's any need to read anymore. It turns out that T2Rs are by no means limited to the tongue and the oral cavity. In fact, they are turning up in the most unlikely of places, including the stomach, intestines, pancreas, respiratory system, even on the heart. You just heard that there are bitter transmitters. There are bitter transmitter receptors not only in the mouth, the tongue, or what they might call the oropharynx. The oropharynx consists of the soft palate that's in the back of your mouth. Soft palate, It's also the side and back wall of the throat. It's the tonsil and the back third, 1/3 of the tongue. That is parts of the oropharynx. It's not just there. The bitter transmitter receptors are not just in the back of the mouth. They are also in the unlikely of places like the stomach, intestines, pancreas, respiratory system, and even the heart. Okay, so now we know that these bitter transmitters are in different places in the vessel. We know that these bitter transmitters are releasing things into the body. They are part of the origins of cause and effect as it pertains to signals being pushed out there. Protein signals being pushed out there called cytokines, for example, and they are talking. It's a language that's being discussed. Things are being discussed back and forth every single moment of the day between your organs and your cranial, your brain, all right? So now you know that's what's going on regarding the bitter taste receptors. Let's move on to the NCBI, National Library of Medicine. We're going to go a little deeper, but again, I'm going to keep it as elementary as possible, okay? Because ultimately we're talking about how these bitters are balancing out the vessel, the mucus buildup, the candida, and the dampness of the vessel as an alkaline secretion of sorts. Bitter tasting herbs, commonly referred to as bitters, are used in many cultures to support upper digestive activity. Yet there is no consensus regarding a mechanism by which the chemosensory stimulation of taste receptors could enhance digestion. Don't worry about all that. Just focus on bitter tasting herbs being used in many cultures to support upper digestive activity. You have the cephalic vagal reflex. Let's talk about that just for a second. The cephalic vagal reflex, stimulation of the oropharyngeal bitter receptors, okay? All you need to know about the oropharyngeal or oropharyngeal bitter receptors is that it's basically what I just talked about, the oropharynx. This is the back part of your mouth, okay? That's all you need to know. It's the back part of your tongue, 1/3 of your tongue, the side and back wall of the throat. Stimulation of this part of your mouth, the receptors, acts reflexively to increase saliva and vagal stimulation to the digestive organs, okay? Going back to vagal reflex, cephalic vagal reflex. These sensory and mental inputs, okay? Remember, we're talking about signals. Sensory and mental inputs converge, which relay signals to the medulla oblongata. Okay? These signals converge, they merge together to relay signals to the medulla oblongata. Most people know what that is, some people don't. With all due respect to those who don't, it's the brain. It's everything that centers around the cranial, okay? Vagus nerve fibers from the medulla stimulate the nervous system of the stomach, which in turn stimulates gastric secretion. One more time. The vagus nerve fibers from the medulla, the brain, stimulate the nervous system in the middle of the stomach, which in turn stimulates gastric secretion. Let's talk about gastric for a second, okay? Gastric juice. Gastric juice, to be separated from bile. Gastric juice is a thin, clear, virtually colorless acidic fluid. Again, a thin, clear, colorless acidic fluid secreted by the stomach glands and active in promoting digestion. You see what's going on here? Are you now starting to understand like why bitters are so important? Bitters do something. They connect to the bitter transmitter receptors, and they do something which aid in digestion, which aid in keeping flow, ventilation, rhythm of the vessel. That's what we're building up to regarding the bitters and how they affect the bitter transmitter receptors, or how things clog and disrupt the bitter transmitter receptors via mucus buildup, candida, and dampness, all right? So that's gastric juice. You have local reflex, which is stimulation of what goes on in the back of your mouth regarding the tongue, regarding the side and back part of your throat, basically. You have hyperamia, which is the major influence of bitters on digestion, which is improved blood circulation in the organs. All right. I'm gonna read a little bit of this, but again, I don't want to get too heavy into this. I read some of it, and it seemed extremely in depth. It says the appetite is sharpened because the gustatory nerves are stimulated. Gustatory, concerned with tasting or the sense of taste. Again, gustatory, concerned with tasting or the sense of taste. The appetite is sharpened because of the gustatory nerves are stimulated. This reflexively leads to dilation of the gastric vessels and to an increase in the gastric and salivary secretions. Okay. Bitter stimuli pass primarily by way of the I don't even want to say that word. By way of a nerve, we'll put it that way, a cranial nerve, to a special group of cells in the cerebral cortex. The taste is interpreted there as bitter and causes stimuli to be forwarded, pushed, thrown forward through the vagus nerve, the cranial nerve, to both the salivary gland, and the stomach. This stimulation of the digestive process enhances the appetite, and that's all you need to know. Enhances the appetite, enhances the flow of bile and gastric juices, okay? All right. This was interesting about wormwood. It is long known that the bitter constituents stimulate the gustatory nerves in the mouth and increase the secretion of gastric juices and bile. Increase in secretion. You want bitters because you want that increase. You need that increase in bile and gastric juices because with that increase in the secretion of the liver, that's where you're going to get that push, that forward push of things so that it's ventilating, it's pushing things through, up and throughout the body so that it can be released in other places, the necessary places where it needs to be released. The rhythm of the vessel is very important, and you must know this, and you must know that bitters have a very important effect on the vessel as it pertains to the constant rhythm of the vessel. Let's go to, because we're at about almost 30 minutes. Let's skip through some of this, okay? Let's go to local stimulation, okay? Local stimulation. We are still in the NCBI, National Library of Medicine. This simple model asserts that the stimulation of bitter receptors acts locally to increase digestive secretions, okay? Regarding the gastrointestinal tract, the discovery of bitter receptors in the gastrointestinal tract tissue suggests that bitters may elicit chemosensory responses throughout the entire digestive system. I cannot express to you enough in the most simplistic form that it's like we're just computers. Have you ever been in an airplane before? You ever been in an airplane before at nighttime? And you look down and it looks like a computer grid. You see the lights, all these lights lighting up all the streets, but you can't see the streets. You might be able to see the cars moving, but you can't really see the streets. You can't really see the houses in detail, but you see the lights. It looks like a very organized, patterned matrix of a system, computer system. So the reason why I bring that forward is because we're talking about chemosensory. We're talking about cytokines. We're talking about bitter transmitter receptors, these protein signals. All this is signals, digestive signals. I want to read that one more time, okay? Gastrointestinal tract tissue suggests that bitters may elicit chemosensory responses throughout the entire digestive system. That means that it's like blinking. There's blinking lights, sensors, signals going on constantly throughout the vessel because they're trying to tell each other, Everything is telling each other what they're doing. They're making it known. This is what we're doing right now. So this is what you need to do. And when you're messing up, when you're fucking up, so to speak, the signals they're confusing. I can't really express to the next person next to me what I'm doing because I don't even understand what I'm doing because something is going on that is unfamiliar, it's foreign, and it's consistent, and it's bothering me, and it's agitating me. And because I'm agitated, the person next to me is going to be agitated because their signals are thrown off, their sensory is thrown off. You want to keep the communication of the vessel as pure, as simplistic as possible, because if you don't, that's where you get the diseases. That's where you get Dr. Sebi talking about mucus buildup being the main constituent regarding the foundation and cause of all diseases. I still don't know that to be true in all my research, but I get it. Once these signals start going haywire, and once this communication breakdown has been in effect for a long period of time regarding consistency, that's where you find diseases, different type of diseases, different type of mental issues as it pertains to the lack of a good diet and the lack of taking care of your vessel. Excuse me. Do you mind if I drink some water for a second? I think we're going to wrap up the NCBI because that's all you need to know. Yes, all day. All this every day. One of these every day. I'm talking about my water. I drink a lot of water, the 3-quart jug. But that's neither here nor there. Let's go to the book. The book, again, is Healing with Whole Foods, Asian Traditions, and Modern Nutrition. I love this book. Very, very profound book. Came out in like 1993, if I'm correct. At least that's when it was copywritten. And a lot of it is basically taken from the East. And there's an infusion of not only Asian traditions, part of the origin of Asian traditions is African. So I want to make that clear also for those of you who are in my culture. Excuse me. So, coming out of Healing with Whole Foods, and by the way, the author is Paul Pitchford, in case you want to pick that book up. Let's go to, I'm going to read this. The bitter flavor of dandelion, for example, reduces both heat and damp conditions in general, particularly in those areas affected by the liver, spleen, pancreas, lungs, and heart. Dandelion and other bitter foods also tend to direct energy inward and toward the lower part of the body. I'll say that one more time. Dandelion and other bitter foods also tend to direct energy inward and toward the lower part of the body. You see why that's important? It's important. That's what bitters do. No matter how bad they taste, they do something that is so wonderful for the vessel. And it's not about taking a lot of it either, which I'll get to that in a second. You can take a little bit on a daily basis. You can take a little bit if you're fasting. Nevertheless, it should be done on a daily basis as far as the bitters are concerned. A number of foods have 2 or more flavors to take into consideration, such as vinegar, which is both bitter and sour. Such a food is used therapeutically only if both flavors are needed. I'm not going to harp too much on that, but what I do want to say is we've all heard about vinegar and how important, or at least apple cider vinegar, is to the vessel. Vinegar is considered a bitter. It's a salt and a bitter. Really good for the vessel also. Something else you can include in your body, if anything, at the very least do apple cider vinegar. Excuse me. Let's go to another page so we can wrap this up, okay? Bitter. Properties of bitter are yin. Cooling effect. Causes contraction and encourages the energy of the body to descend. Again, as elementary as possible. Causes contraction Contraction is the muscle of the intestines moving, pushing, expanding, and encourages the energy of the body, the frequency to descend, to go down, okay? Because if it's not contracting and if the energy is not descending, you're irritating the organs, you're irritating vessels, and you're causing inflammation and buildup, and you're disrupting and dismantling the rhythm of the body. Also known as no ventilation in your bathroom. I don't want to call your body a bathroom. That's disgusting. But nevertheless, it's a great example. You got to give me that. I thought of it on my own. I'm joking. I mean, I'm serious, but I don't take credit for anything that comes out of this mind space of mine. I give it all to the ancestors. Reduces the excessive person. Let's I digress. Let's move on from that. I'll read this part. Bitterness is antipyretic, lowering fever. It will also dry fluids and drain dampness. Why would I not read that? Bitterness lowers fever, dries fluids, and drains dampness. Certain bitter foods and herbs have a purgative effect and induce bowel movement. Again, going back to the contracting of the organs of the intestines and the descending downward. Use of the bitter flavor, helpful for inflammations, infections, and overly moist, damp conditions specified below. Also used for constipation, perhaps the most underused and least appreciated of the flavors. Of course, because it's hard to taste. It's hard to digest, but you can train your brain. You can train your mind. You can train your vessel. You can train your bitter taste receptors to be able to deal with bitters. It's all about consistency, like anything else. It's like training a muscle. I'm gonna read that one more time because that's the most important. That is the highlight of the bitters topic conversation of this episode. Use of the bitter flavor, helpful for inflammations, infections, and overly moist, damp conditions specified below. Also used for constipation, perhaps the most underused and least appreciated of the flavors. The bitter flavor is closely identified with the fire element and heart, where it clears heat and cleans arteries of damp mucoid deposits of cholesterol and fats. In general, tending to lower blood pressure. The bitter flavor also clears stagnancy, and cools heat in the liver normally caused by overconsumption of rich foods. Now, I know I could have just read that for the whole entire episode and that would have been good enough, but I want you to be aware of what's going on within the vessel. That's why I'm telling you all these things. That's why I bring up things like the vagus nerve, because I don't want you to just know what the bitter is doing. I want you to know that the body is this perfect, it's a perfect machine. It's a perfect involuntary machine because it does so much by itself without your permission. It doesn't need you for anything. And that's beautiful. That's majestic. That's magic to me. That's a miracle to me that the vessel does this on a moment-to-moment basis all day until you take your last breath. That's why it's important to make sure every breath you take is golden, is special. It's special. Every breath you take is so special. Everything you put in your body is so special, including the air you breathe. That's a whole nother story. I'm going to read that one more time because, again, that really sums up what this episode is about. Organ functions. The bitter flavor is closely identified with the fire element and heart, where it clears heart and cleans arteries of damp mucoid deposits of cholesterol and fats, in general tending to lower blood pressure. The bitter flavor also clears stagnancy and cools heat in the liver, normally caused by overconsumption of rich foods. Let's move on. This is a lot right here. But I'm going to give you some bitters, for example. Bitters: alfalfa, bitter melon, romaine lettuce, rye. Bitter and pungent: citrus peel, radish leaf, scallion, turnip. Bitter and sour, we talked about that. Vinegar. I do a vessel cleaner. Anybody who follows me on IG knows that I post my vessel cleaner all the time. My vessel cleaner is a bitter cleaner. It's a bitter cleanser. It consists of At least in the morning, it consists of dandelion greens, watercress, lemon, lime, oregano, rosemary, lemongrass. What else? Chlorophyll. At nighttime, it consists of a lot of those same things, except I add ginger and turmeric to it also. Bitter, 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 bitter. So good for you. They don't taste great, but so good for you. But I've been doing it for so long, I'm used to it. Still a little kick. It's a kick, but I'm used to it. You can get used to it also if you change your mind. Bitter foods and herbs drain various damp-associated conditions in the forms of candida yeast overgrowth, parasites, mucus, swellings, skin eruptions, abscesses, growths, tumors, cysts, obesity, and all moist accumulations, including edema in the regions governed by the spleen, pancreas, the intestines, and the flesh of the body. Bitter also increases intestinal muscle contractions. We talked about that. The kidneys and lungs are said to be tonified and vitalized by bitter flavors. Bitter is superb for removing mucus, heat conditions in the lungs, signified by yellow phlegm discharges. Even though bitter is the flavor that enters the heart, according to the Inner Classic, it is the proper flavor for the lungs. It is the proper flavor for the lungs. Individuals most benefited: slow, overweight, lethargic, watery, damp individuals, mucus build up in individuals. Also, overheated, aggressive people are cooled by the bitter flavors. Aggressive people wonder why they're aggressive. Maybe it's because the bile is agitated and angry and irritable. Bitters cool that down. You better cool off. You better cool. Was that corny? That might have been a little corny. I think we're going to pretty much wrap this up. I think that really does give you a very in-depth perspective and lens on how to view bitters. What else do you need to know about bitters? Yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I have another page that I took down, but I don't think it's... I'll read this part. That'll be it. I'll read this part. Most common bitter foods are not wholly bitter, are not fully bitter, but combinations of bitter and other flavors. These foods include lettuce, watercress, endive, escarole, turnip, celery, asparagus, alfalfa, carrot top, rye, oats, quinoa, and amaranth. The bitter flavor is also part of the protective coating of some foods, citrus peels, and the outermost leaves of cabbage. The strongest bitter qualities are in the herbal realm. I'll say that one more time. The strongest bitter qualities are in, are in the herbal realm. Common examples are chicory root, burdock root, horsetail, chaparral. Roasted ground chicory is available as a major ingredient in many coffee substitutes. Let's stop right there. Now you know. Now you know. Now you know why bitters are so extremely important. It's all about ventilating the system. There's so many ways you can ventilate the system. So many different therapeutic flavors you can use to help ventilate the system. You have to ventilate the system, just like that small room, because I don't want to call your vessel a bathroom, because bathrooms are... The point I'm trying to make is that a small room with no ventilation, but yet you go in there and turn the shower on every day, every night, or twice a day, whatever. It's building up. It's build up. It's affecting your vessel. It's just like but the same thing happens when you're irritated because of something going on the outside. That's affecting your vessel also. So a good diet can balance that out. A good diet can balance out what's going on in the immediate surroundings regarding your environment, whether it's at work, whether it's family-related issues, whether it's trauma. I remember at the peak of intensity of when I was dealing with trauma, I knew one thing for sure. I was like, we're going to keep my diet tight. My diet was very, very refined in the intensity when I was dealing with the intensity of the mood disorders and altered states. Like I refined it. I cut that real tight because I knew that if my vessel was going to withstand what I was dealing with on the mental, spiritual planes, I knew that's all I had to balance it out. Balance what is going on in your world, the external world, with a good diet, as good as possible. Because what you need to understand is, are these foods that you're eating? I thought I wrote down some of the foods. I don't think I did. But these foods that you're digesting on a daily basis that are highly acidic, whether it's fats, whether it's sugars, whether it's dairy, whether it's meat, it's bad. It's bad for you consistently if you're not balancing it out with alkaline. Too much acid in your vessel is bad if you're not going to balance it out with alkaline. That's why fasting is so important. That's why good dieting is so important. So I think I put enough emphasis on what bitters are all about. Again, do your own research. This is my research. I gave you some really good resources. You can DM me, hit me up in the IG. You can email me, elricoramon@hotmail.com. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to, the Instagram, the Facebook, and also my YouTube channel. I'm going to put this interview on YouTube also. Subscribe, because that helps me to help you, obviously. I think that's what I'm supposed to say, right? But no, seriously. Just understand that these things are extremely important to the vessel. So let's wrap it up right there, because I could ramble on forever. You don't want to hear me ramble on forever. Get your bitters. That's what I was saying. Do your own research on what bitters are good for you. They're all going to be strong, okay? All the bitters are going to be very tart. And yes, it's not the easiest thing to digest, but if you do a little bit at a time, you'll get used to just start off with a little bit. Baby steps. If you want to go gung-ho with it, that's fine too, but just understand, no matter how you go about doing it, you have to be consistent. You can't do it for just 2 days and then that's it. Can't do it for just 2 weeks and then that's it. You got to do it consistently. Take care of your body, because if you take care of your body will take care of you. And understand that you're going to go through hard times. You might be on a high right now. This nice high right now. It's going to come down. Trust me, it's going to come down. So when it comes down, be prepared. Plan for those dark moments, because in those dark times, you want to be able to balance it out. Same thing for me. I'm doing really well ever since 2013. I'm doing much, much better. I still deal with things. I still have my symptoms of things that I've dealt with, but I know how to control it. I know how to manage it. And I know that at some point it could get heavy, really heavy again. But because of my consistency, I feel that I will be able to resist, sustain, manage, contain, and balance everything out in good harmony regarding my diet and other therapeutic practices. So, with that being said, that is the bitters. I hope that was elementary enough. I didn't want to get too far off into the science of it all. If you want to do that, you can do that on your own. That's too much for me. Nevertheless, thank you for joining me on Normal LOL. And again, don't forget to follow me on all my social media platforms. And I'm going to put this on YouTube momentarily. Take care. Enjoy your week. I love you. Coming up, we're also going to talk about colonics. We're going to talk about, again, the different things that go on regarding the colon, regarding the gut microbiome. That's coming up with a lady named Cheryl. It's going to be a wonderful interview. That's this upcoming Monday. I will see you soon. Peace. I love you. Goodbye.